My basement is full of books, and I'm doing a journey of exploration on each of my shelves. What books do I own? Hello, welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile reads. My name is Greg, and this is the second video of a series where I will be exploring the physical books on my bookshelves. I will be doing the NYRB Classics line today, and maybe in a future video I will explore some other shelves. I will be going through these books rather quickly. I will not be giving a detailed summary or explanation of most books. On some, I may have some extra comments, but mostly I will be just showing you the titles of what I have. All for Nothing by Walter Komposky, translated from the German. In 1945, the Germans are on the retreat from the Red Army. Ride a Cockhorse by Raymond Kennedy. A 45-year-old woman in a sleepy New England town is fermenting an inner revolution. Havoc by Tom Kirstensen, translated from the Danish. A young man is bored with his career and his beautiful wife, so he starts flirting with Catholicism and communism, called a cross between Ulysses and Steppenwolf. Autobiography of a Corpse by Gigismund Kurzhanovsky, translated from the Russian. These are short stories published after the Russian Revolution. It is being called a cross between Gogol, Kafka, and Beckett. Radiance of the King by Camara Lai, translated from the French. A white European man is shipwrecked off the coast of Africa and must make his way to visit the king of the African nation. In the Eye of the Wild by Natasha Martin, translated from the French. Martin was a French anthropologist visiting Russia, and she was mauled by a bear, rather seriously. This is her memoir of that experience. Last Words from Montmartre by Kyo Myojin, translated from the Chinese. This is a loosely fictionalized account of Myojin, who was a lesbian Chinese author living in Paris at the time. This is her love letters to a lost lover. Caput by Curizao Malaparte, translated from the Italian. Malaparte was dissatisfied with Mussolini, and he went to the front during World War II, and this is his experience and what he saw. Ivory Pearl by Jean-Patrick Machette, translated from the French. Machette was one of the most famous French crime writers from the 70s. Nada by Jean-Patrick Machette, translated from the French. Revolutionaries decide to do a kidnapping in Paris. Non Gusto Affair by Jean-Patrick Machette, translated from the French. Another story about a kidnapping gone wrong. Skeletons in the Closet by Jean-Patrick Machette, translated from the French. A washed-out private investigator is hired to do a case that he's not actually supposed to solve. The Balkan Trilogy by Olivia Manning, 3 novels about Britain during World War II. The Levant Trilogy by Olivia Manning, 3 more British novels about World War II. Agostino by Alberto Moravani, translated from the Italian, written in 1942. It is the story of a 13-year-old boy coming of age on the Tuscan seaside. Di Sabatino, H.G., The Vanishing by Guido Morselli, translated from the Italian. What if you wake up one day and everyone in the world has vanished but yourself? This is one of those kind of stories. Shavangar by Andrei Pletinov, translated from the Russian, a Soviet-era novel about revolutionary ardor and despair. The Foundation Pit by Andrei Platonov, translated from the Russian. Soviet-era workers are told to dig a very deep foundation pit for what will be a magnificent Soviet-era building. Soul by Andrei Platonov, translated from the Russian. Soviet-era short stories. Mort de Bon by J.F. Powers, a novel written in 1962 about a priest with a high tolerance for moral ambiguity. The Skin of Dreams by Raymond Queneau, translated from the French. An author has difficulties telling the difference between his dream worlds and the real world. Diary of a Man in Despair by Frederick Rieck, translated from the German. Rieck was a German man during World War II who did not support the Nazis. These are his memoirs. Can you guess what happened to him? The Word of the Speechless by Julio Ramon Ribeiro, translated from the Spanish. These short stories were written by a Peruvian author after World War II. Muhammad by Maxime Rodinson, translated from the French. Rodinson was a Marxist philosopher who wrote this biography of Muhammad. Classic Crimes by William Ruffed. These are journalistic crime stories taken from the newspapers from the early 1900s. Gold by Rumi, translated from the Farsi. This is unique because many of Rumi's poems are not translated directly from the Farsi, but this translator gets it right. Equal Danger by Leonardo Cecisa, translated from the Italian. This was written in 1971, and it is a detective crime story. Transit by Anna Seghers, translated from the German. This is an existential, political, and literary thriller about what happens after you escape from a Nazi concentration camp and all the issues you would have to account for. The Seventh Cross by Anna Seghers, translated from the German. Another political thriller about 7 people who escaped from a Nazi concentration camp. Conquered City by Victor Serge, translated from the Russian. A Soviet-era novel about the fall of St. Petersburg and the terrors that came afterwards. The Case of Comrade Tutulev by Victor Serge, translated from the Russian. A Soviet-era murder mystery. The Widow by George Simenon, translated from the French, written in the early 40s, about a man recently released from prison and his hookup with a beautiful widow. Dirty Snow by George Simenon, a 19-year-old criminal in Paris during World War II. The Strangers in the House by George Simenon, translated from the French. A man who has been a recluse for 18 years after his wife abandoned him is learning that his daughters are up to no good. The Stone Face by William Gardner Smith, originally published in 1963. A Black American man who lost an eye in a vicious attack is going to Paris to see if he can find a new life. The Flanders Road by Claude Simon, translated from the French. Simon was the winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. This is a fictionalized account of Simon, who witnessed a cavalry charge in 1940, the French against the Germans. Theorem by Pier Paolo Palazzoni, translated from the Italian. Palazzoni was also a filmmaker, and this is one strange little novel. The Murderess by Alexandros Papadamantis, translated from the Greek. The author lived from 1851 to 1911, and this is a short little novella about the secrets that women keep that may include murder. Blue Lard by Vladimir Sorokin, translated from the Russian, originally published in 1999. It is about an attempt to clone the dead Russian authors. Telrulia by Vladimir Sorokin, translated from the Russian, originally published in 2013. This is a science fiction novel set in the future where society has collapsed and there are wars between Islam and Europe. The Judges of the Secret Court by David Stackton. This is an historical novel about John Wilkes Booth and his entry into a conspiracy to kill Abraham Lincoln. Names on the Land by George R. Stewart. Stewart is more famously known for his science fiction novel, Earth Abides, and this is his history of how places get their names. Storm by George R. Stewart, originally published in 1941. This is a fictionalized account of a massive storm. The Faun by Magda Szabo, translated from the Hungarian. This is the story of the Hungarian communist era. Temptation by János Sziskely, translated from the Hungarian. This is a coming-of-age story of a young man between World War I and World War II, originally published in 1946. My Death by Lisa Tuttle, a short horror novella about an author investigating the work of an obscure artist. The Book of Blom by Alexander Tisima, translated from the Serbo-Croatian. This is being called a modern retelling of the Book of Job and talks about the execution of 1,400 Serbs and Jews during World War II. Tyrant Banderas by Ramon del Val Inclán, translated from the Spanish. Del Val Inclán made a bet with Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Ro Bastos about who could write the best Latin American novel of tyrants. Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote The Autumn of the Patriarch, and Raul Bastos wrote I, the Supreme. And of course, Val Inclán wrote this, Tyrant Banderas. Heaven's Breath, A Natural History of the Wind by Lyle Watson. What makes the wind, and what is the science behind it? That is what this book is about. Butcher's Crossing by John Williams, the most philosophical and intellectual Western that you will ever read about hunting buffalo. Extremely graphic with animal violence. Nothing But the Night by John Williams, his first novel of psychological noir. That is the end of my tour of my NYRB Classic books. Next week, I will do another line of books. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.